Next chapter, Act 2 notes. Next note, Kymon scripture, first passage. They mocked us and drove us out. They called us heretics and madmen. They thought our great prophecy and purpose was fanciful and ridiculous. Woe unto them! Behold the divine wrath that has been delivered unto the unbelievers in the remaking of the world. Our prophecy has come to pass, and I hear not laughter anymore. I hear only deathly silence. Doom has befallen the wicked, the ignorant, and the indolent. Only we chosen few, who have trained and prepared our bodies and our souls to weather the cleansing of the world, will survive and thrive amongst this death and decay. Look to your right and to your left, in front and behind you. You see the faces of your hallowed brothers and sisters, bonded together in this holy quest. We have been tasked with the sacred duty to extinguish the last remnants of corruption and reseed the purified land with our progeny so that the new dawn can arise. Take strength in each other and in the knowledge that we are destined to fulfill this divine purpose. Long have we prepared for this moment, and our time of concealment is ending. We will strike forth, boldly northward, into our destiny. Let not the faithless, the corrupted, or the demonic stand in our path, lest our divine wrath be visited upon them. Now muster, my children, gather only those belongings that can profit us in our holy war, and let us march forth from this humble refuge unto our destiny. Next note, dust-covered journal. If these crumbling stones could speak, what tales would they tell? 1,000 years of history lost to the ravages of time. What wonders and horrors have these stones seen? The splendor of a shining kingdom and the corruption that brought it all crashing down, all told within a few bits of rock. All of it is lost now. Only fragments remain in the old tombs and the forgotten places. I often wonder if King Rowan was deceived, that by abdicating his throne he brought about the very thing he wished to flee. I also wonder how many of those last lords of Arkovia fled to this once great fortress to escape the collapse of their empire. The great Arkovian watch, guarding the southern borders. Did they hide in futile hope of being overlooked by the rampaging peasants who sought them out for their greed and arrogance? Or did they fight to the last? Were they captured and hung from the walls of their own strongholds? Or did they flee into the catacombs only to perish among the relics of the past? I sit here now and wonder what my fate will be among the ashes of the past. Will I join them, equally forgotten? Or will the bandits and horrors now stalking the world find me in this hiding place and tear me apart? Not sure it matters anymore. All the knowledge that I've gathered, all of the scrolls and tomes and memoirs that I've written, none of them matter. That world is gone, lost to time as the great Arkovian Empire. We have been reduced to savages, fighting for scraps of food and blankets like packs of wild dogs. We murder one another for a place to sleep and sacrifice our friends and family to blood cults and vain promises of safety. I always questioned whether the history of Ireland would stand the test of time as Arkovia had before us. Now I'd rather we were not remembered at all. Scribe Fagin of Berwick. Next note, last days of Arkovia. As I write this, dark columns of smoke billow up from the port where the madness long pullulating the restive populace has finally boiled over. A blazing merchant's galley, abandoned by its crew freed of its moorings, plows into a group of fishing boats, with splintering, the fire quickly spreading among the sails. I hear shouting in the courtyard below, and the clash of iron not far beyond. A woman screams repeatedly, her words undiscernible. For so long, we feared our doom would come from the barbarous mountain tribes, but in the end we've been the instruments of our own demise, helped along by the insidious promises of the necromancers. It is not yet 2 moons since the great rituals were undertaken, led by our ever-reaching oligarchs, the rituals intended to bring immortality and ensure the lasting greatness of Arkovia. Ever the skeptic, I figured it for a sham, political theater at best, but the ritual seems to have been a tragic success. This ritual was the invention of a necromancer named Uroboros, a man imprisoned in the steppes of torment, who it is said did not age and could not be killed by any means. The leaders of the 3 greatest houses, including my own patron, Lados Vagra, made an ill-conceived journey to the tower in hopes of compelling this Uroboros to give up his secrets. Here, immortality worked against Uroboros as he was subjected to the most brutal and imaginative forms of torture that could be devised for a man who could not die. Finally, Uroboros agreed to instruct them in the ritual, and the oligarchs, blinded by their lust for immortality, were all too eager to believe his will broken and accepted the ritual as genuine. It has become dear that the people of Arkovia have indeed gained a form of immortality, but it is a cruel and twisted fulfillment of that promise. Our bodies still suffer the ravages of time, eventually dying and decaying, whilst our spirits remain trapped within, eternally bound to this land. I have witnessed this myself as the sick and elderly, near death at the time of the ritual, remain with us yet. Their bodies visibly decay in the manner of a corpse, yet they continue on as though living, able to move and talk, still much the same persons as they were in life, yet not. All who suffer this death of the body become somehow less vital, less dynamic of thought. They become ever more narrowly focused on whatever concerned them most in life. It is disturbing to witness families that do not know what to do with their deceased, yet still present, loved ones. More horrible still are the rumors of babies born since the ritual. Abominations, they say, deformed and bearing dark grisly feathers. It is said that many forlorn new fathers have been seen trekking into the broken hills, bundle in arm, to leave their unnatural offspring to the elements. The din of fighting and wailing continues on below. I expect it shall for quite some time, since the combatants cannot die by any mortal means. I sit with my books and continue my writing for whatever time may remain, perhaps all eternity. Theodicus Vagra, scribe of Arkovia. Next note, Writings of Rolderathis, first entry. The end of days is upon us. Glorious Arkovia, beacon of the west, is crumbling from within. But fear not, brothers and sisters, for we are the chosen of Ishtak. Here, upon the sacred ground of our forefathers, I shall be safe from the ruin brought about by the hubris of the oligarchs. Here we shall outlast the immortal plague and return to the surface as the second dawn of man. It is with a heavy heart that I seal the entrance to our temple. May Ishtak have mercy on the damned souls beyond these walls. They will find no solace here. Next note, Writings of Rolderathis, second entry. The blessings of Ishtak have failed us. The wards did not protect us. The curse of Arkovia has found its way here. We are dying, yet we cannot die. My brothers and sisters tear at each other in their growing madness, only to rise again to renew the carnage once more. The gods have abandoned us. This wasn't to be our salvation. This was to be our tomb. Next note, Writings of Zarthuzellan. The one they call Uroboruk makes a mockery of the gods. The Lord Executioner cut at his flesh, but the wounds refuse to bleed. His limbs grow back. His skin is impervious to flame. I believe the time has come for me to descend into that vile place and deal with the heathen myself. We shall see how he reacts to the cleansing flame of the divine. Next note, The Hidden Path, Solael. You have traveled far, seeker, and seen much, but still the veil between worlds blinds you to the deeper truths. You stumble about the world we inhabit, eager for answers that the empire and its luminary deny. They think us heretics, followers of false gods, and yet none of them can claim to have witnessed the power of their deities. They're illusions. Show me the cripples that Minhir has cured, the armies that Olron has toppled, the beasts that Modrigan spared from the hunt. You cannot, because they are not real. But the witch gods, born of man, had ascended to raise us from our own ignorance. If you are willing to listen, they may open your eyes as well. You now stand before the shrine of Solael, the youngest of the three. Eldritch fire is at his behest, the very essence of the eldritch realm, his to mold and shape as he sees fit. Clothed in black robes that hide his gaunt frame, Solael glides unseen through the shadowy veil to hunt unwitting mortals for their vitality. Many a devout of Solael had been asked to make the ultimate sacrifice, to present themselves before the dark god and offer their life so that Solael may bestow his infinite wisdom upon those that remain. You, worthy seeker, do not yet have the attention of the gods, but know that with each step you take you bring yourself closer to the three. Go now to the frozen lands of the north, where primitive tribes had constructed standing stones ages ago. Armed with the words of Solael and Drieg, the way shall be open to you. Next note, Coliseum Horrors. I joined my colleagues at the Coliseum to watch the gladiators battle. It was a perfect day, perfect weather, warm with a slight breeze coming off the river. Joined by good friends and a few skins of Elberk's golden wine, we even got good seats from a wealthy merchant who couldn't get away from some business he had to attend to. We could not believe the fortunes that smiled upon us. We were prepared for a great showing of bravery and excitement. What we saw instead was a nightmare. The first match was a simple duel between the veteran Karnath and some criminal whose name I immediately forgot. It wasn't a fight but an execution, an appetizer before the main show. In the opener, Karnath toyed with the man, tapping his sword and dodging his pathetically slow attacks. When the crowd got bored and started booing, Karnath did a quick swipe and the man's guts spilled out onto the sand. The people roared and Karnath threw his arms up in triumph, turned his back on the criminal and walked away to bask in the accolades. But that was when things took a horrifying turn. The criminal was a dead man. Nobody could have survived such a vicious blow, but instead of dropping upon his own insides, he just stood there looking at the intestines piling up in the bloody sand. After a few breaths, the man staggered forward. I figured at last the fight would be over, but instead he surged forward, his guts dragging behind him, and buried his blade deep into Karnath's back. A silent gasp overcame the crowd as they witnessed the fall of their favored champion, but he too did not stagger from the lethal blow. Karnath simply looked at the blade erupting from his chest, spat up a mouthful of blood, and pulled himself free of it. He turned slowly towards his would-be killer. In a rage, Karnath struck out and, with a mighty clash of steel, knocked the blade from the criminal's hand. With the backswing, he cut the man's arm clean off at the elbow. The now delimbed criminal stumbled backward to recover his weapon, but Karnath had other ideas. The gladiator stamped a mailed boot down on a bundle of sand-covered bloody flesh that snaked its way from his opponent. With a heave, he pulled the criminal back towards him and proceeded with a series of cruel attacks that could only be described as butchery. The crowd watched in silence, horror and awe frozen on their faces, as Karnath delimbed the man, who screamed all the while for mercy, but he would not die. His blood had long stopped pumping, but still he would not die. Exhausted and confused, Karnath stepped back from his bloody work. The criminal, now just the remnants of a torso and a head, gasped and screamed. The gladiator scowled and walked out of the arena towards the barracks with a dark purpose upon the blood-drenched sword still clenched in his hand. The crowd remained for some time, stunned by what they had witnessed. Nobody came to help the butchered man who still clung to life at the center of the arena. Though not a word was spoken, our minds were as one. We all feared whatever malady had struck him so would befall us too should we get too close. How wrong were we to think that? The curse had already claimed us all. Mar Plavos, first son of House Plavos. Next note, we're on our own. Cronley's lost it, I'm telling ya. Bastards got in his head that we can just march on over to Devil's Crossing and take the place like they was dying in there. For what? Revenge? Bourbon's small fish, and that settlement's low on supplies. Base as good as dead. Taking it is a fool's errand anyway. With the bridge out, it's practically an unassailable fortress. But Darius is gonna throw lives at it. Yeah, we got us them crystals in our backs making every man feel like 100, but that does us no good when the only way into Devil's Crossing is up a sheer cliff and a bullet to the brains. No, Cronley and I are through. Me and the boys is headed for easier targets. To the west lie big farmlands, no doubt unspoiled by what's going down in the towns and villages. Farmers will be easy pickings and the food should last us the year before we pack up and move on again. No sense in sticking around this disjointed crew no longer. Now who's with me? Runnick. Next note, the scales strike balance. It is a strange sensation, or should I say lack of it, to witness the world around me without tactile sensation. I hold a forkful to my mouth, yet the weight of the fork is non-existent to my hand. The act itself is just a gesture. Food offers no flavor anymore. In a way, that is a blessing, for the stench of decay no longer bothers me either. What remained of the putrid flesh upon my bones has all but rotted away, and with it, rots away my mind. Putting pen to paper becomes increasingly difficult as my thoughts wander to emptiness. It is no longer that mystical silence of daydreaming where the mind explores its reaches, but the absolute absence of anything at all. That, I suppose, is the end of this curse. An eternity of emptiness awaits us all. Outside my home, the harbor is alight with the orange glow of massive flames. Judging by the shouts and noise, my countrymen have set themselves to burning the ships. To what end, I cannot say. Perhaps the arson fills them with a small flicker of purpose and life. For me, I still find solace in philosophy and parchment, for as long as my mind remains capable of it. For example, one may consider the curse which befell our lands to be divine punishment handed down upon us for our hubris. I am a skeptic, yet even I cannot deny the irony of undeath condemning people hellbent on exterminating necromancy. If the gods truly exist, then they have a sick sense of humor and justice. The scales of Alchema, it appears, have struck a balance in the end. Nefer, scholar of Arkovia. Next note, Ravings of Naren Kur. Banished, the sheer audacity. The other oligarchs assured me that if not for my standing, I would have been butchered on the spot like a sow pastor prime. Instead, they gave me the dignity of exile. In truth, they fear me. They fear what I've achieved, what I've uncovered in the depths of our libraries. There is a power in this universe, a gnawing madness that threatens to unravel all we've built. It yearns for the blood that was taken, and we are but mere drops in the ocean of its torment. To defy a true God, a being so ancient it predates time, is folly. My eyes have been opened, and I now walk the true path to our ascension. The others cry heresy, but I could see the terror fester within them. They are more than willing to torture an old man for his alleged secrets to immortality, but yet even this trickle of knowledge strikes them with disgust. If only life was not but a flicker in the infinite stars. Oh, what I could do, what I could learn, with several lifetimes. Next note, Wilkins Note. Word going round the camp is that the undead finally stopped attacking the walls. Not that I'm complaining, but a man's gotta wonder why. Just the other day, we lost 3 on the west wall when a bunch of them corpse fiends burst out of the bodies and took everyone by surprise. They was bleeding us dry, with no end in sight to their numbers. Hell, pretty sure I've seen a few of our dead lurking around out there. Now I ain't no general, but seems to me like it was only a matter of time. The boss says that we've won, that old Arkovia belongs to the gang. He's even called in his top lieutenants to join him in the mine for some sort of celebration. Feels too soon to me, but ain't nobody asking what Wilkins thinks. Next note, the Bruiser, Romanov's note. The boss says I done good when I smashed them rover skulls for hiding their food. Says I'm next in line to join him and his brothers in the new dawn. I've seen what those boys can do with them green crystals in their flesh. They could tear a man in half like a loaf of bread. But I heard them screaming too when Cronley put the crystals in. Sounded worse than the last time he got his hands on a rover woman. But a little pain's not about to turn me into some knife-stabbing wimp. Nobody's gonna outmuscle the Bruiser around here. Next note, Bloodstained Note. Third time this pale-skinned duo in robes, a man and a woman, has shown up at the hideout. The boss says to let them through, so I let them through. The whole camp's on edge whenever those two show up. Maybe it's their eyes. That unsettling green glow reminds me of the dead ones. Or maybe I'm just agitated because the crystals Cronley stuck in my back seem to vibrate whenever the duo's around, like they're ready to rip loose. The voices I hear when I sleep are already enough to make a man tense. The others told me that they hear them too, but none of us can remember what the whispers say. Boss says it will pass though, that it's just a part of ascending into the ranks of his glorious army. This new dawn of his had damn better be worth it. Next note, excerpt from the Annals of Arkovia. Annals of Arkovia. It falls upon strange times that a king would abdicate the throne of his own volition. Stranger still is the reason he gave his court. There is no other way to put it. King Rowan, the third of his line, had been struck by madness. Upon returning from a successful campaign against the barbarian tribes of Agaron's Peak, the king raved about a chance meeting with a weary traveler whom he called Mogdragen. Rowan, in his generosity, offered the old man the use of his horse. The man, and here is where the king's tale loses all sense, declined the proposal and, speaking in a low voice that only his majesty could hear, instead offered Rowan a warning. The old man spurted prophetic lies about the impending collapse of our great nation and the fall of the beacon of the West, Arkovia herself. He implored the king to leave his title, his wealth, his very identity behind. There were some amongst the court who urged Rowan to see his madness through, greedy heads of Arkovian houses who saw this tragedy as an opportunity to seize power. The queen, the shining jewel of Arkovia, wept before her king and begged him to reconsider, but Rowan was resolute. With a single decree, he shattered the royal line and abandoned his ordained post as king of Arkovia. Word of the king's madness spread quickly among the populace. To my great surprise, some of his subjects followed Rowan's lead, abandoning their livelihoods to follow their despondent ruler into a life of poverty and lost identity. It has been 3 fortnights since that fateful day. The queen lies dead in her chambers. They say she had died of sorrow from the loss of her king, but I suspect more clandestine causes. The court has fallen into chaos as the great houses bicker amongst themselves for the empty throne. With no end in sight to the squabbles and no clear line to the throne, my patron, Laudos Vegra, has called for the formation of an oligarchy ruled by the heads of Arkovia's elite. No good can come of this. Of that I am certain. These days I cannot help but wonder if Rowan's prophecy was a self-fulfilling one. Or perhaps this storm was a long time coming, and we were merely too blind to see it. I fear for Arkovia. I fear for her soul. Theodicus Vegra, scribe of Arkovia. Next note, Cronley's Notes, Part 1. When attack stopped and the ethereals sent in their envoys, they knew they had us by the balls. All they had to do was squeeze in. Any other man would have sung them a tune worthy of the Erelin opera, but they've never contended with Darius Cronley. They came, 2 of them, humans in ropes. Only thing that'd give them away was the eyes. The eyes glowed that sickly ether green. They offered me a chance to surrender, a chance to live out our lives as vessels and breeders for their growing army. I sent their heads back on spikes. See if those spirits survive that. But when they came back again, with new terms, well, then they were speaking my language. I was to be a piece in their grand design, a master of my very own army of ether-empowered humans. All I had to do was to pledge myself to their cause and to plant one of their crystals within the mine. The rest, they said, would be revealed in time. Next note, Cronley's Notes, Part 2. The Ethereals left. They are headed north to Homestead in order to squash a human resistance orchestrated by the damned Black Legion. I've been left to my own devices, but for one caveat: eradicate Devil's Crossing. It is a task I will relish with great pleasure. There are so many ways I could squeeze the life out of Bourbon, but unfortunately I'll have to settle for just one. Perhaps after I behead his mangled corpse, I'll shove him full of ether shards and bring him back as a personal servant. Then I can kill him over and over and over again. But first I must finish my glorious army. Another batch of aspiring followers is due to arrive within the hour. They have no idea of what suffering and agony is in store for them. I sometimes wish that more would die during the procedure. The failed ones make for such entertaining playthings, their screams echoing through the tunnels. Perhaps today I will have to slit one's throat, just for good fun. Next note, Forbidden Art, Part 1. They whisper about us when they think we're not listening. They fear what we can do, and yet they crave it. It is only in man's nature to fear what he does not understand, and our art is no different. Necromancy was never held in high regard in Arkovian society, but it is only in recent years that we have been treated with such growing animosity. Next note, Forbidden Art, Part 2. A woman, her face a mix of woe and desperation, came to my home this morning. I have to admit, I thought her fervent knocking marked the end of my freedom. I dreaded opening that door, but there she was, covered in tears, a small bundle in her arms. Had I done as she had asked, the child would become a monster, an abomination not fit for this world. There are some things even man, in our endless arrogance, should not interfere with. Next note, Forbidden Art, Part 3. I can hear them bustling about outside. They came at last, and in great numbers. Wise. I must end this entry as they will soon be upon me. I do not fear what will come next. In the end of all things, there will be ashes, and only I will remain. Euroborik. Next note, Malros Khas Journal. I thought about ending it, but I witnessed firsthand what happens when you try. Good people, driven to madness by this curse. I don't blame them for trying to escape this never-ending torment, even if escape seemingly comes at the edge of a knife. There is no way out, though. We are bound to our flesh and bone, even as they rot away to the winds of time. To others, a knife brings a sharp reminder that we once lived. There are those who willingly partake of this newfound pleasure, carving each other apart in a downward spiral of decadence and depravity. But I cannot deny the temptation to join those in the streets as they spill their blood onto the cold stone. As I look upon my rotting hands, I begin to wonder if perhaps it is too late even for that. How long will this torture last? How far will we decay before we are at last set free? Next note, Passing Judgment. This is to be a record of the passing of the final verdict regarding the practice of necromancy and its prominence in Arkovian society. The Grand Court has reviewed the case of one Alarak who had willfully and consciously committed the despicable act of raising the deceased form of his neighbor's wife and using her to torture and exploit the victim for personal pleasure and financial gain. Under the weight of undeniable evidence and witness reports, this court had no choice but to sentence the necromancer Alarak to hanging until dead. This crime is but a drop in the well of the sins committed by necromancers in our land. The people have spoken and action must be taken. For this, and countless other crimes against nature, against the gods, and against Arkovia, let it be known that the practice of necromancy, the most vile of the ancient arts, is henceforth forbidden from the lands of Arkovia under the strictest of punishments. Those found ignorant of this proclamation shall be transported, without trial, to the steps of torment, where they shall be locked away to the last of their days in the deepest pits of anguish.